allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The approval of the agenda is next on the...
I move the board approve the agenda as presented. Oh, I'm sorry. I move the board approve consent agenda items 3.1 through
Nope.
3.7.
Back it up, you were right the first one.
I was?
Yeah.
Second, the first
Sorry.
one.
Denise?
Oh, sorry.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And Mr. Ackerman, honoring excellence.
Good evening. Great night of celebration. I'm going to call this the Night of the Champions, as we're going to go back actually several weeks, and just so people know that I didn't miss this, we obviously always take a couple of the summer months off just due to conflicts and everything associated with that. So we're going to go back in time to June the 3rd, and again, we're excited to be joined by several members of not one, but two state champions. And in case you missed it, Saturday, June the 3rd was a pretty good day for the Liberty North Eagles. Literally within minutes of each other on that evening, the Eagle baseball team captured their second consecutive title with a 9-3 victory over Francis Howell, and that was followed up by a thrilling 4-3 overtime victory, knocking off longtime Missouri powerhouse Nerix Hall, that by the Lady J soccer team. The Lady Eagle. Man. Darren in the back. Start over. My apologies, my sincere apologies to Coach Person. The Lady Eagles. Ladies, if you would join me with Coach Person. I know Coach Lindsay is here as well. I'm going to have Coach Person introduce the ladies that are with us here tonight. If you just stand right here next to me. I know we could not get all the players. I know we have some that are have graduated and are now on to college, but these four that are kind enough to be with us this evening.
So we have goalkeeper Gabby. Freezing. Gabby Rose.
Now I don't feel as bad.
Gabby Rose. I mean, game-changing
Get
save
back in the
final.
rhythm here.
Emery Lauber. Aubrey Seltman. Lauren Wood. And Kay Lindsay.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, you all. And I just wanted to read a couple of highlights from this squad. They finished with a 22-0 record and became the third team in state history to be undefeated and win the highest state classification since 1985. The varsity program now has a combined 55-5 record in the past 3 years. Coach Steve Person here next to me, he literally goes out on top as he announced his retirement from coaching the Lady Eagles earlier in the year. Assistant coach Katie Lindsay was named his successor back in June, and we want to wish her nothing but the best as she is down at the end here, and I know we'll do great things, and the program's in good hands. And Coach Person, we appreciate all you have done and your contributions to the Lady Eagle program and Liberty Public Schools. So let's give Coach Person a round of applause. Again, with graduations and young ladies moving on to the next level, we also want to salute 2023 Liberty North graduate Megan Hennenkamp, who was named the 2023 Missouri Gatorade Soccer Player of the Year. Megan, of course, can't be with us this evening, as she is now into her freshman year at the University of Florida, and from what I've seen, doing really well, off to a great start, scoring goals. That's what she does. So with that, I want to give a big LPS congrats to the Liberty North Eagle soccer team. Great job. Thanks for being here.
And before they sit down, as is our custom for state champions, We give a standing ovation.
And again, thanks for being here and congratulations. Great job. Next, I'd like to invite Coach Ryan Stiegel and those representing the Liberty North High School baseball program to the podium for recognition. Coach Stiegel, who are these three gentlemen?
Yeah, third baseman Cole Young here, catcher Bo Jonas, and shortstop Trey Snyder.
Fantastic. I know key contributors to the Eagles, and I'll read a few highlights from this program. With the convincing 9-3 win over Francis Howell down in southwest Missouri, the Eagles made it back-to-back state championships. They became the first school in the highest classification to win back-to-back state titles since 1981. Finished the year with a 34-7 record that included numerous team and individual records being broken. Similar to the soccer team, they too had a 2023 Missouri Gatorade Player of the Year, and that was Tate McGuire, who has now moved on to the University of Arkansas to pitch on their baseball team. So Liberty North with 2 Gatorade Player of the Year, State Player of the Years in the same season, which is unbelievable. And of course, Carly Cisneros, the volleyball player, was another Gatorade Player of the Year in the fall. Something I wanted to mention, and they didn't even ask me to do this, but definitely worth noting is that this team was inspired by one of their assistant coaches, Rob James, who passed away after a long battle with cancer in May. You could then, and you can now, still find the phrase "ready for battle," a phrase coined by Coach James, all over the town, including on their uniforms, T-shirts, baseball field fencing, on their polos here tonight, and that probably tells you what he meant to them. So he continues to be missed not only in the Liberty North baseball community, but throughout the Liberty Public Schools community and beyond. What a special night of state championships. I'm going to introduce the Liberty North Eagle baseball team.
And again, a standing ovation.
That is for you. Great job. Great job. Thanks for being here. Before I wrap up this evening, I know many in this room had a chance to attend our Rise and Shine LPS event on Friday. We really were fortunate to have a beautiful morning in the weather department, and I appreciate everyone's support for making it possible. As Corey Thomason can only do, he captured the event in a 2-minute video that we wanted to premiere for you tonight. So again, appreciate everyone for being there on that morning, and we'll be sure to share that with the community. That has never happened before in the fact that our special guest bolted. I guess it must be the night before the first day of school, but they have been summoned back. They're on their way back into the boardroom, so we should be back on our original plan and schedule. So that will wrap up on our
Dallas,
next one.
did you say you're sharing this with the community?
We will,
Video?
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Dallas, thank you to you and your team
Yes.
for putting on what
Yes.
you do for that.
It was
for that
amazing.
recipe.
Yes.
It was great.
I like the
Phenomenal.
comments, the compliments were just being able to move around and talk to everyone, that they were so pleased with that, the setup.
I appreciate that, and I will certainly pass that along. So, appreciate it. They're coming back.
All right, we will do our regular breaking. We'll come back at 7:20. You have 6 minutes.
Wow.
If we need I'm
sorry.
Yeah, buses out.
I didn't know that.
Pittsburgh.
I'm gonna go watch it.
All right, does anyone have any public comment cards? We have two gentlemen in the gallery, and so therefore I'm going to skip the public comment and move into consent agenda. Where we have, well, let me find it. Sorry. I need to find myself a better way to do this.
It looks like they updated it again.
Mhm.
It's not helpful. Denise, where do I need to go?
This asterisk, do you have the asterisk? On the
Under-
outline?
It's right under
Left
number
side.
3, consent agenda.
Let me see where we're at. To here.
Go to this thing and then go on that little thing. Go on. Right there.
There we go. Sorry for the delay. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedures, Robert's rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member.
I move the board approve consent agenda items 3.1 through 3.7.
Second.
Second?
Jen, go. Jen,
Sorry,
second. That's okay.
I kind of choked. Oops.
Nick,
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
AJ.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now on to reports from the administration.
First item is 4.1, Innovation and Learning Report. We will welcome Dr. Moore to the podium to provide that update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We are ready in Innovation and Learning to welcome back students tomorrow. We've been prepping, visiting schools, and all seems, I was just telling Karen, all seems well, and everyone is ready to get the year started. I want to just thank the team in Innovation and Learning for just getting prepared. We've had a lot of, obviously, transitioning, and so they have been amazing. I want to recognize Dr. Schmitz. She's here keeping me company in the back tonight, so thank you to her because she's done quite a bit already this summer. As you know, we welcomed 111 new teachers through New Teacher Innovation Institute. During pre-service, just this last week, we also welcomed Dr. Katie Martin. We had great feedback from both teachers and building leaders, and we're hoping to have her return to do some more work with our team this year. She really helped kick off our theme of what if in her keynote. On September 22nd, we will be sending out individual student reports from the spring 2023 state tests. More information about how we did as a district will be released soon. Right now, what we have are just the individual student reports from the company that, as this is kind of typical, right, that they give out the actual, just the individual student reports, and then we'll get district results later. Also wanted to let you know that we sent out a sign-up for school visits for the Board of Education to be able to get into buildings and just see all the great things that are going on. So those will start in September and they'll go all the way through April. We sent that out today, and we actually already have 17 buildings signed up. So we'll get those invites sent out to you, and whenever you can make it, that would be great. We have some in the morning and then we have some in the afternoon. So hopefully you can make some of those. And then finally, our CNA program is going to start this Thursday with 21 students in the first year. I want to thank William Jewell and Liberty Hospital for partnering with us to make this happen, and I want to thank all of you for approving that program so that we can make this happen for our students. We're going to try to help them maneuver William Jewell because it's a little bit of a construction zone right now, but we'll be up there Thursday to make sure that they get to where they need to go.
Awesome.
With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions of Dr. Moore this evening?
Actually, I would just like to say, it was so exciting at the New Teacher Institute to see all of those bodies packed into that open area. I knew when I walked in, with all the extra tables set up, that we had a large class of incoming faculty. And so there was just a great buzz in that room all, the entire time that I was there. And they just seemed excited. How many of those are LPS graduates? I think it was in somebody's report, but I don't.
It was, I'm not sure that was in your report, but it was, I want to say, gosh, somewhere around 20 at least.
That's what I
There was
thought.
quite a few.
And we have our first Grow Your Own back?
We do. It's at
Nice.
Liberty North.
Nice. That's exciting. And Katie Martin, I'm so excited to read her book.
Yes.
I've heard all kinds
I'm
of good
excited for you
things.
to read it.
Yeah.
It's very validating. As soon as you start chapter 1, it's very validating of the work that we're already doing in Liberty. So I'm excited for us to dive into it.
I felt like that was her message. She was validating,
Mhm.
and the fact that she could validate secondary and elementary was impressive.
One thing that she did, just that, is she tailored her presentations for the elementary and the secondary group, which most of the time keynotes don't necessarily do that when they go back to back. So that was very appreciative that she gave elementary examples and then secondary examples.
Yes, she was really good. Thank you for bringing her into the district.
Absolutely.
Other questions of Dr. Moore?
With the MAP test, you said going out third week of September, something like that, and that we'll prepare something district-wide as a summary of that. What's the timing?
And Mr. Hand typically will have a letter that's come from his department informing parents, kind of updating them. A lot of that information remains embargoed. And so they give your individual results first, and then they release your school level and your district level data. And so you'll see some coverage around that. But as soon as that embargo is lifted, more of that information would be shared.
So that comes after it's released to individuals?
Yes. I
And
want to say
so-
that comes toward
so-
the end of August as that embargo is
Okay.
released.
Okay.
The goal being to get data into the hands of teachers first and foremost,
Sure.
so that they can begin to make their plans for the year, and then the subsequent piece and release to parents or just students follows that. Keeping in mind, it's information about the previous year,
Right.
not the current grade that they're enrolled in. So it's a little bit of a retrospective as compared to a where you are here and now and how to impact this coming school year. So.
And also, just as a side note, iReady, we'll get that started here pretty quick after school starts, so we'll have some fresh
Yeah.
data to share on students.
I do have a question about school links and how that will be rolled out to the students. I know, I saw the video kind of geared towards parents and saw something else that was kind of in the maybe North newsletter. But how is that going to be rolled out to students since they don't have an advisory in high school necessarily?
Right, so we're going to use Flex. We'll use some classes, and then for freshmen, our goal is to try to maybe use Flex time a little bit more, have it a little bit more structured for them, so keep them in a place where we can walk them through that.
Okay.
And
Looks like a really neat platform.
It's
I wish I
fabulous,
had
yes.
it.
Very user-friendly, I think, and so that'll be the goal. Bob Citro has been working on our own links so that parents and students can get on easily from our LPS website, and then we just need to get them trained through, we'll do through classes and through Flex Time as well.
Okay. And is there any accountability for student, like we know students are using it, or they're, like, some students are very aggressive and they are very,
Sure.
and then there's kids that need a little more direction. And I feel like that tool would be really helpful for those kids, but getting them to actually do it, is there any sort of accountability to seeing that they're actually using this tool?
There will be, only
Okay.
because their ICAP will be housed in there, and then we will house their market value assets in there as well. So there's many, and then all our course catalog, all of that will be in there. So they're really, that's going to kind of be our one place that we're going to reference them to go,
Okay.
so that they can see all things career, college, and then high school.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Moore. 4.2, the Student Equity and Access Report. Dr. Dixon Seahorn apologizes in her departure earlier this evening in that she had a family situation to attend to. But she did leave a few talking points, and so I told her I would be brief but spectacular, to use her phrase.
Where's your leopard print?
That's right. I know, I got nothing. In regard to a couple of her categories, she wanted to mention in regard to equity and real-world learning that we are again anticipating taking our 8th grade students to visit colleges, universities, and career centers. The window or time frame for that is mid-October into early December. That then kind of bleeds into them completing their ICAP, as Dr. Moore was speaking to earlier. Some of the institutions that we have lined up, and this grew from the first time we did it to this year. Colleges and universities include William Jewell College, University of Missouri, Kansas City, Park University, University of Kansas, Missouri Western State University, and University of Central Missouri. Community college include Maple Woods Community College and Blue River Community College. And then our 2 career centers include Northland Career Center and Excelsior Springs Area Career Center. And wanted to make mention that, again, this is made possible through funding through the Kauffman Foundation Equity in Schools grant, but then also looking ahead. I know she and the team are already in conversations about sustaining this program and how to fund it moving forward. So we look forward to continuing this work. Within the Department of Student Services, it's been that time of year where we're looking at registering families, whether they're new to the district or returning students and their registration. To date, as of her notes provided, 92% of district students have completed the returning registration process as of today. With other platforms like Power School that we leverage for those purposes in registering students, we are experiencing some glitches with the Power School side of things with some of our new families, and we're working on trying to iron those out. We have about 20 new students that we're working with in terms of those glitches. If there are families that are impacted by that, for whatever reason, need access to a schedule, we encourage them to reach out to their building leadership, building administration to help troubleshoot those in the coming days of school starting. In Special Programs Department, we want to recognize our social workers for hosting their annual back-to-school event, Liberty North High School. I think a couple of you may have stopped by to witness that. All in total, 75 cars were served, consisting of about 107 elementary students and another 86 secondary students. Additionally, there were 25 families that were waitlisted. That included 29 elementary and 25 secondary students that were able to be served and receiving backpacks through the generosity and help of our social workers in collaboration with the Education Foundation. Lastly, with our Special Services Department, we welcomed 33 new Special Services staff on August 8th and 9th for their back-to-school meetings, and so appreciate the Special Services leadership team in coordinating and planning for that. Providing information as relates to writing an IEP, overview of the district, and then some conversations collaborating on the vision for the Special Services Department here in Liberty Public Schools, as well as the opportunity to connect with process coordinators and school psychologists. So thank you to Dr. Andre Dixon Seahorn for providing that report. Any questions of Andrea?
I have
We'll be sure and get
Special
those to her.
Services. I am really impressed and thankful that they are being proactive and working with families who have IEPs. I think that's been a real change this year that I think has been well received. So thanks to them.
I would credit that too to our broader conversations around engagement.
Yep.
We not only talk about that at this level, at the district level, but down to each department, down to the school level. So hopefully we'll see more and more of that. So, yeah, thank you for those comments.
So I know you may not know the answers to these. You mentioned, we're in the report, waitlisted students for the backpacks. They're going to get one, right? Am I reading that correctly?
I believe they were able to be served, was my understanding,
Perfect.
in talking
That's
with
what I
her this
thought.
afternoon. So they originally were waitlisted, but then we were able to slide in and assist those many more students. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
And just from you actually may know this one. So of those 8% of students who have not completed the returning registration process, they show up tomorrow, what happens?
Yeah, great question. And keep in mind that 8% might be those that have alternative plans.
Sure.
In receiving an education, be it homeschool or private school or transfer to another district. That tends to settle down these first few weeks of school. both families leaving the district for something else, but then new families coming to us, and some that may just not have finalized that process. And so as they come in, typically they won't have a schedule. They'll go to interact with their front office and their counselors to be able to process some of that, at which at that point we'll say, hey, we need you to be sure and take care of this registration piece. So a little bit of triage on the first few days of school, and inevitably we'll have students show up for the first day of school that have not spoken with or contacted the district. That's okay too. We want to make sure they have a place to learn, and so we'll be working through that today and through the rest of this week. So.
Cool.
And may I just say congratulations to the SPED department. 33 new teachers.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
How does that compare? And you may not be, there may be an Dr. Seahorn question. Like, is that new hires is in filling new need? Is that turnover? Is that a mix?
I think a little bit of both. It is higher than past years across the entire system, specifically within the SPED department. I don't know, Dr. Marriott, you probably don't know that information off the top of your head either.
We hired 6 new for new positions.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
newly created positions to meet student needs.
Okay.
And then I would state that that is typical turnover for special education in the country at the moment.
Yeah.
It's
And-
a tough job.
And we know the challenge in filling those vacancies, right? That's one of our higher need positions as far as filling those spots, so. Were you going to ask something?
Yeah, I was going to ask, kind of back to Nick's question. Is there a procedure or step for students who ended last year and don't show to seek out what happened to them?
Yes. Sometimes we know if that student has transferred to another district and they then request their records from us. That's the easiest,
Okay.
where they're literally transferring from one district to another. Statutorily, students that opt to go homeschool need to notify the district. We get quite a bit of that as well, of their intent to homeschool their student. So in that respect, we do see that. Sometimes
not
it's
necessarily a one-for-one. You don't necessarily go to the trouble to identify every one, but what you're identifying are those things that they would notify the district.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
not trying to seek out to.
We
check
do
off,
eventually.
do you?
We do eventually because we keep them enrolled. We
Okay.
keep them somewhat inactive until the point in which they register or re-enroll with us. And so again, our final count is not submitted until the end of the month of September, in alignment with DESE's requirements. So we'll have a better sense of our attendance at that point. We got our last count as of August 8th, and I want to say we were in that 12,370, 80 range. I had that number earlier today in a presentation. That'll grow slightly with early childhood students aging into the program over the course of the year, but Kelly Soluri, to his credit, monitors that throughout the entirety of the year, and then of course Bob Citro is involved in uploading that information for the district to DESE. So there'll be a little bit of back and forth over these coming weeks as we start school, but we'll have a better number for you once we get into the month of September. Okay? So much for being brief.
Well, you did a stellar job.
Now I know how Dr. Dixon Sehorn feels, being at the podium. Next up is our finance report, 4.3, Ms. Cindy Sullivan.
But you were spectacular.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have one donation to share for you tonight, an anonymous monetary donation of $1,000 to the Communications Department to be used for expenses associated with the all-staff convocation. We're very thankful for that. As you indicated, it was a great event, and it's nice to have support for that event from community members. Tonight, I wanted to highlight a couple of things that Business Services is busy doing. I often say we're busy wrapping up the year, and I just wanted to give you a little insight of what all that includes. One of the things was the annual Secretary of the Board report that was posted for you tonight. And if you looked at that, you saw what a large document that is, and it is a state requirement that we upload that to DESE by August 15th. And it was completed on August the 8th, and it's a lot of work from the back office, and I do so appreciate all of the work that they put in to get that done in a timely manner. In addition to that, We currently have 16 state and federally funded grants that are on the books in some form, and 12 of them also have a final expenditure report similar, not quite as all-encompassing, but very similar to that the business office is responsible for submitting to the state as well. Of those 12, 8 of them have been submitted already on a timely basis, and that includes all of our federal programs, our special education IDEA, and those type of grants. That we still have some ESSER grants that we have to federally report out for final expenditures. The 4 that are left remaining have not been opened for submission yet, so it's not that they haven't submitted them, they just haven't had the opportunity. But they work very hard in the summertime, and it never fails. The question we get asked the most often is, do you work during the summer? And we do. And they work very hard, so I appreciate them, and don't give them the thanks very often in public that they should get more often. So I appreciate the work that they do. In addition to all of that, they're preparing for the audit. The audit begins on September 18th. And the auditor will also meet with the Audit and Finance Committee on the evening of the 18th, which is an annual event for the Audit and Finance Committee. The Audit and Finance Committee did review documents this month. They didn't really have too many questions. They were more interested in our upcoming insurance renewal, so they were asking about that. But other than that, they did not have anything to pass on to you. And the other work that we're doing this month is we're waiting on final assessed valuation numbers so that we can prepare for the upcoming tax rate hearing for you in the month of September board meeting. That's what I have to update for you tonight. Happy to take any questions.
We also appreciate the work of your team, so
Thank you.
Summer's a hard time to be busy, but it's appreciated.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
It is.
Other questions of Ms. Sullivan's?
Quick, go.
Thank you. 4.4 then, our operations report, and we will welcome Mr. Anderson to the podium.
Good evening. First wanted to highlight the annual reports for the various operations department, which are in front of you tonight for review. And within that, I just did want to call out the team just broadly. It's been a busy summer, as it usually is, getting ready for tomorrow. And of course, being complicated by some certain weather conditions that are upon us. So anyway, just wanted to call them out and thank them. Also, Dr. Tucker was good enough to join me as we welcomed back several of these teams when they had their first kind of get-together, orientation, transportation, kids' own crew, safety and security, and nutrition services and health services. So that was always a good opportunity to kind of see them and their excitement as well to kind of get ready for get the year started. Also included is the operations work plan, so the goals that were created here over the summer that will be included in every monthly report for the course of the year as we work towards some of the goals that each of them have developed and what they feel is important work for them this year. And then last, there's a bond update, so this is the first one. This is with respect to tennis, and so how this will work, and we've done this in the past, we have kind of a prospectus, which is an overview with the plan of what was approved and put out to bid. And then along with that, once it starts construction, we'll provide a monthly report from Newkirk Novak. We'll give you some pictures as well as just progress updates and how the overall project is tracking. So as the projects continue to add in, you'll see more of these reports, but I think that's a good way for you all to keep up to speed, and of course we will push those to the district website for the broader community to take a look to watch progress. One last point, actually Cindy was good enough to mention this the other day, is seeing if we could find a way to include some video footage for some of the work to monitor progress. And we've done that a little bit in the past, and of course technology's improved, so we're going to look to incorporate some of that for some of the sites, especially the outdoor work, which will be helpful as well. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
When do you expect the tennis courts to be finished?
Well, it's a good question. I think right now it's tracking November.
Okay.
But they're doing everything they can to cheat the schedule a little bit. We have a couple busy weeks. I think it's Thursday. We have, starting at 4:30 in the morning, we'll have 40 concrete trucks show up to kind of start building the base of the courts, and then following Thursday, there's another 40 trucks. There's a
Like
whole-
all at one time, or like a
No,
continual parade?
it'll be well coordinated.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, it's just going to be a lot of work to kind of, so probably this time next week, you'll really start to see kind of the foundation of the work. But right now, it's looking about early November, I think, is the schedule.
40 concrete trucks. I might just have to come over and watch that parade.
Be up early.
What is that doing to the parking at Liberty High School?
So that's also part of the complexity of the work, is they're adding parking once they kind of get the site back in order, and adding a couple rows of parking between the backside of tennis and softball. It's probably showing on that perspective sheet.
It does a little bit.
But yeah, so they're losing parking. Obviously, I think the net loss is in the neighborhood of 100. But with the activities complex and the fine arts ads over the years, they certainly felt they could accommodate the loss of 100 spots without suffering through that.
Okay. I was just curious, because that's always an issue in that building.
Yeah.
To do that,
I think it's
so.
less of an issue these days because they've added those extra lots.
Good.
I have
Thank you.
appreciated the communication, so partnership between Gary Majors and Dallas, I'm presuming on the notifications to parents about our upgraded safety efforts. And I know we've gotten some positive media coverage on that as well, and so I think it's just another good opportunity to say thank you to you and Gary and working on that for plan for our department, and then communicating that out to parents, because I think that is very important as well for them, and that we all have a role to play in making sure that we see something to say something, and we all want to have a safe school year. So thanking the voters again for approving the bond so that all of this is possible. So.
And the debt service transfer was really what made that, freed up those dollars for that.
Right.
As a new board member, these annual reports were really helpful to sort of get a grasp on what happens in these departments. So I greatly appreciated having the opportunity to read those.
Thank you.
Anything else from Mr. Anderson? We're going to hear from him a little bit later on, so thanks, Mr. Anderson. Next up, then, 4.5, our Human Resources Report. Dr. Marriott.
Good evening. So as you're aware, tomorrow we welcome almost 13,000 students to the Liberty School District. And an integral part of a successful school year is the staff supporting all aspects of student public education experience. And so we're thrilled to welcome 1,067 certificated staff members and administrators, 981 classified staff members, and 66 extra duty only assignment staff members, for a total of 2,114 staff members for the 23-24 school year. In order to best support our team members this year, the district continues to engage in services with Kelly Services to provide substitute staffing. This includes, for the 23-24 school year, the employment of 2 full-time substitutes at each of the high schools and 1 full-time substitute at each of the middle schools and elementary schools. And these team members are going to provide that essential support to the buildings as they will float on a daily basis within their assigned building to where they're needed for that day. Team Liberty is going to conduct their first meeting on Tuesday, August the 29th. Team Liberty is the process and established by the board to facilitate discussions with staff representatives regarding salary, benefits, and other employment issues. And the first item on Team Liberty's 23-24 agenda is benefits and insurance renewals. And then a final piece from the HR team is, in conjunction with the Office of Student Equity and Access, we completed on-site legal compliance training for Title IX, which is sexual harassment, and Title VII, which is harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. And our teams participated in that training through Margaret Hesse with Tuakini on August the 15th. And we also have additional training this Thursday with Gwen Mundorf to attend. So that team, the HR team, will process any concerns, grievances related to staff, and then the Office of Student Equity and Access will provide the process for any grievances related to students. That is all I have.
Any questions of Dr. Marriott?
Is there still just one unfilled position?
We have one position in which we have a long-term substitute assigned for that, yes.
Okay. That's pretty amazing.
Yes.
In regard to all the pairs that I saw on the
Mhm.
sheet, are those new pairs or pairs that, because aren't they at-will employees, so do they have to be rehired every year?
They are given a letter of intent of employment every
Okay.
year, so they're not issued a contract as our certificated staff members are. They receive a letter of intent to employ for the year. We do typically, and I say we, meaning most school districts, do often see some frequent turnover in that specific position because, as Ms. Rogers shared, that, can be a challenging position for most often working with students that have special needs.
So are all of the pair positions now filled?
We still have, I believe, a few openings.
Okay.
But the teams have been working really hard to have all of those filled, and I know through substitute coverage, they'll make sure that students have the supports that they need
Great.
on day one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing on that regard, to give credit to the Special Services Department, is monitoring and managing the distribution of paraprofessionals that are driven then by your IEPs and individual students requiring a paraprofessional, which will ebb and flow over the course of the year as we identify what services individual students need. And then as we have experienced the last couple of years, that's an area of shortage in terms of a workforce area that we've continually tried to recruit and attract, retain, all the above. But that will be an ongoing piece as we enter into the school year as well. So
Paraprofessionals are
So,
quite the workhorses.
As a new board member and the kind of understanding the background on this, percentage-wise, do we have a larger percentage of students needing these services than we have in the past?
we were looking at that data the other day, and I don't want to misquote what that percentage is, but it holds around 10 to 12%, I want to say, within our district, but then also kind of across most districts. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Dr. Marriott.
That's accurate, and that is a reflection same through the state as well, about a 10 to 12% average percentage of students that have special services.
Okay.
What we are seeing in public education is that we have students that require a lot more intensive supports, or they have unique needs that may require that one-on-one paraprofessional to work with that student. They may need some additional support. So we're seeing more of that, and I would say that that's not necessarily anything unique to Liberty. That's very characteristic across all public education.
And you'll see more of that data shared once we get to that program evaluation report, when Dr. Cook and her team puts that together for us. So they'll have more up-to-date, accurate data for us to take a look at.
So this isn't necessarily an HR question, but the student enrollment data is in your report, so I'm going to turn to you and say, remind me when we do an updated demographer assessment again, because I'm looking at our numbers in the kindergarten through 5th grade.
Right.
And they're a lot smaller than where, like, our high school numbers are.
And so nationally, what you're seeing is a trend in terms of birth rates being lower than they were, let's say, at the early 2000s.
Okay.
And so if you go from that kindergarten level really up to about 5th grade, and then 6th grade, you start seeing some of those larger classes, and then by the time you get to high school, you have a couple in the 1,000 plus, 1,100. Couple of things. The birth rate on the front end is a factor. Secondly, at what point are families moving into the district, whether it's to start kindergarten or at that elementary to middle transition or that middle and high school transition? I think it's all the above as far as what we see. But in essence, what you end up have happening is students exiting their senior year. What does that incoming group look like? And then how does that cohort, it's called a cohort survival rate, how does that cohort look as they matriculate from kindergarten through to 12th grade? Does it remain constant? Do they lose students? Do they gain students? All that being said, as we monitor that monthly, we can put that next to our demographic projections. And we have that high, mid, and those low projections, as you might remember. That only looks so far out. And then that information gets pretty fuzzy.
Is it like 3 years?
It's around 3 years. We can project further than that, but demographers aren't very comfortable looking beyond that. And so over the course of this next year, we'll re-engage a demographer, look at our demographic study again, engage with area developers and hospitals, health departments, to get a better sense of what's happening in that space, particularly on the birth rate, because it has certainly slowed down as compared to where we were even at the early 2000s. So anything to add to that, Mr. Anderson?
We will be putting an RFP out in September or
Okay.
October. It's
Yeah.
usually every 3 or 4 years that we do that. And then usually it will be like early spring, probably we would get the report back.
And of course, the bridge, back to Dr. Marriott's report, is in and around staffing.
Right.
What is the implication for us in staffing as we think about kindergarten sections and class loads, and of course that bleeds into innovation and learning as well. So it's all interconnected. All right, thank you, Dr. Marriott.
Thank you.
Just as a note, as all good to sit. You're good. You're set. But just as a note, as we get a couple weeks into it, if we could get like a number of classrooms per grade per school, get that average
Yes.
student, that'd be awesome.
And we have that. There's a
Yeah.
couple that we're watching right now.
Yeah.
Where, use first grade, for example.
Sure.
Where you may have a ratio of students to teacher, let's say it's 27 per classroom.
Yeah.
By removing one teacher, that makes a drastic difference.
sure.
By adding a teacher, that makes a difference.
Yep.
And so with the help of innovation and learning and our human resources department, we track that for elementary and secondary. We can certainly bring that forward, along with special education and how that distribution is as far as student to teacher ratios. It's a little bit difficult to track, but I think we've finally got it down. And so our team looks at that pretty regularly, but we can bring that forward. So, thank you. Next report then, as far as the superintendent's report, a couple of things to highlight, some of which has been mentioned already this evening. I do want to thank the Innovation and Learning Department for hosting several things, the New Teacher Innovation Institute, along with our Teacher in Service. One thing to make note of or make mention of in regard to the New Teacher Innovation Institute was the program in the agenda. I know you all attended as a welcome to get to know our cabinet and our board members. Appreciate you participating in that. After you all departed, we departed. They really dove into their work as it relates to a brief overview of Liberty Public Schools, but then also sessions in and around school law, special education law. I know Dr. Dixon Seahorn presented, Dr. Marriott presented. We also had special education present, and then opportunity to collaborate and spend time working in their buildings. So we appreciate innovation and learning coaches helping coordinate that. We also had our in-service, as Dr. Moore mentioned, with Katie Martin, who is part of a Learner-Centered Collaborative, is their organization. The CEO is Devin Vadichka. You have at your tabletops her text, her book, Evolving Education, Shifting to a Learner-Centered Paradigm, and we thought that would be fitting for us to conduct as our book study. So wanted to give you your homework assignment for our first study session. We'll go easy on you. We're going to look at chapters 1 and chapter 2. And so when she was with us the other day, I remember her opening comments that her goal with us, with our elementary teachers and our secondary teachers, was to not only validate, but to push as well as inspire. And so I think she was able to do that, and it takes a unique person to really be able to stand in that spot and deliver a keynote to a very diverse staff, elementary and middle and high school teachers, and really felt like she did a great job. So we look forward to diving into her work. Part of our connection with her and the Learner-Centered Collaborative is through our participation in Digital Promise, League of Innovative Schools. So we've known of her for some time, but are fortunate to have welcomed her into the district. A couple of other pieces I wanted to make mention of. The Success Ready Students Network at their last State Board of Education meeting presented to State Board and DESE the request for an innovation waiver, of which they approved unanimously. There's been quite a bit of media coverage in and around that, and we're going to continue to message and push information out. But for the time being, that is really the first step of the State Board approving those 20 districts, Liberty Public Schools included, to participate in this innovation waiver or demonstration project, as it's also referred to, that then will work over the course of the next several months and this year to design an assessment and accountability system. So we've been now under MSIP, Missouri School Improvement Program. This is our 6th iteration, so think about the next iteration and really how we might be able to impact that. through these innovation districts, this demonstration project. So the state board's approval last week was the first step that then allows us to focus on through-year assessment. We are still beholden to the MAP test and, of course, exams until we receive a federal waiver. And so that is really the next step with these innovative districts, is to pursue, in collaboration with DESE, a request to the United States Department of Education to consider an innovative assessment waiver. Most recently, the state of Montana got their innovation assessments waiver approved. And so we do have a few models to look at as to how they're designing and constructing things, but we'll be keeping everyone apprised of that progress as things roll forward.
So is that federal waiver, is that as a group, or is it as a system, or is it individual?
You have options. Really, you listed 3 of the 4. So you have the option as an individual district or an individual system. And then you also have the option as a set of school districts in terms of like the system design zone districts, these 20, or you can apply for it as an entire state. And so in DESE's history, we've applied for it as an entire state in the past and stopped just prior to submitting that application. We were involved in those conversations. In this regard, moving forward, it would be that set of 20 districts that then would step into that space, work on this innovation assessment waiver at the federal level. If that were approved, you would then end up with another set, eventually another set of districts that would apply for that, with the idea being that at some point it blankets or covers the entire state. Montana's covers the entire state.
Yeah, that's
a little different. That's right.
Smaller.
A little smaller.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So we'll again continue to provide information as that piece moves forward. The last thing that I had was in respect to our Student Services Department and Rebecca Bresman. Earlier last week, in between Katie Martin's presentations, she hosted in this room an appreciation for our administrative assistants. We have done that in the past, but in and around our efforts to focus on trust and customer care, customer service, we've had conversations around how oftentimes that is that frontline person. Our administrative assistants are the conduit for establishing care and trust with our students, with our families, certainly, and we wanted to get them off on a good start and appreciate them with a brief luncheon, but then also a brief program where Gary Majors was able to come in and present a little bit on communication and safety and security and how to navigate difficult conversations. And then secondly, a unique presentation was provided by Jessica Meisenheimer, of which Rebecca helped relay, and really focusing on our English language learners and that population and how we have more tools at our exposure than we've ever had in ensuring that they transition and their students transition well. Devices that we can leverage texting in their language of origin that then translates into English and then back into their language of origin, all the way to buttons we can click on our website to translate web pages, but then also documents, all the way down to actual physical translators that we can pull in for a variety of meetings to assist them in their transition. That is spectacular. But I think everyone left appreciative of the time spent together. It was a brief hour, but then we also want to make this an annual reoccurring appreciation that is really tailored around what they want and need to know as far as our administrative assistants. When everyone was together, we had about 80 plus that are from our buildings, from our district administration center, all of our operations departments, of those folks that serve in that administrative assistant capacity. So we appreciate them participating in that.
80 in this room?
Yes.
No.
Not all of them were in attendance. Most
sure.
of them were. But of course, it was a busy time and a few people that had other engagements that they had to attend to. So with that said, would open it up for any questions that you all have of me this evening.
well, Dr. Tucker's being modest, but I listened to the State Board of Education meeting, and, he is part of the team that presented and did a great job fielding questions from a supportive board, but that asked, as they should, very tough questions to make sure that our ultimate goal is to see results in improved student learning. And it was great to see, to hear, I guess in my case, the hard work that our district has been doing in moving this forward, then become a model for the state. So,
And I think just to echo that, and I know you love public attaboys, and it's your favorite.
So let's pass.
So, yeah, so we'll go down the line. But I just wanted to say, I've heard from a lot of people that were so complimentary, you know, of the work we've been doing as a district, but also your leadership on that. And so, you know, as you alluded to in terms of the process in the past and how far it's gotten and stopped, I mean, this is a big step for the state, having that support from the state board. And so it really is a very exciting thing. And even though it was sandwiched in the middle of the report, you know, it's important that, you know, that people recognize that.
I appreciate that. Well, and the accountability that follows that. So it's frequent checkpoints for the state board from these districts providing information. There's a research component through Marzano Research that'll look at these assessment practices and compare to MAP and end of course results. It is certainly easier to stay with the status quo. So on my 3-hour drive back from Jefferson City, it started to sink in and how much more work we have to do, but we'll do our very best in messaging and communicating it to everyone. So thank you for your kind comments.
I'm just sitting here ruminating on the administrative assistance notes that you were making. And,
yeah.
You have does that team have what they need to support that group with those types of events? And I mean, both financially and just simply support in general?
Not to the extent we want them to have yet.
Okay.
So I think this was a starting point of gathering that. They've gathered together before, but it's always been voluntary.
Sure.
Because some of them aren't quite on the clock yet. We made the decision to have everyone present with a few exceptions that couldn't make it from other commitments, make sure they're remunerated. So where we started was kind of the beginning.
Yep.
And so how do we grow it from there, whether it's ongoing throughout the year or this time next year, and how do we ensure that they're getting that professional learning that many of our other departments receive, our other staff categories receive, particularly when it comes to interacting and engaging with a very diverse community.
I think that's what we forget, is that
That's
is
right.
the front line of every building,
Yeah.
and they're going to, and anybody walks in is going to interact with that individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it may be in person, it might be over
For
the
sure.
phone,
That's right.
a myriad of emails, so it comes at us in a lot of different ways. And kudos to that office staff, that office team. They're often the ones that parents and students both have that interaction, great interactions, but every now and then there are some that go awry,
Sure.
and how do we equip that staff to handle those? So, yeah,
And they're also one of the first lines for faculty.
that's true
If
as
you
well.
need something,
Yeah.
it's those administrative assistants that they know everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have a key role.
All right. Thank you all.
On to new business.
A couple items. The first one is 5.1, the Liberty North High School and Liberty High School baseball softball complex bids that are tied to our passage of our no tax increase bond issue earlier this spring. We pulled that from consent agenda item and want to ask Mr. Anderson to speak to that a little bit as far as bringing that recommendation to us this evening. So we'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. So I've got two parts of what I was going to present here tonight. One is I was already going to include under my operations report to give you a little context on the process as we move forward with bidding and so forth related to the bond. And then if you have any specific questions about the discrepancy with what was initially estimated on this project and what the bids came in at, what we're proposing you accept tonight. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that typically these have always been under consent, in part, just all construction in general, but in part because of there's a timing issue here, so would really appreciate your consideration of this tonight on first reading. So first of all, just a quick overview. We go through the bond planning process, as you all who were involved for the last couple of years and working with architects and gathering input and visiting sites, identifying potential projects. As we did that work, we started to put estimates on that work. And that's all they were estimates. They weren't highly informed. We didn't want to invest in the architect or engineers to spend any time kind of paying them to do the work to understand what they were truly about, nor do we want to engage folks specifically on the various design teams to understand what the project should really look like. So these are very high level numbers, and the only thing we always know for sure is they're wrong. It's just how wrong they are, but it does help inform the work that we do. So anyway, I think that's an important first point. And again, we don't know the square footage of the projects. We don't know a whole lot of details, so they're kind of placeholders more than anything else. As it moves forward then a little bit further, then we make the decision of what projects to include. Here we decided to keep the total overall bond projects about $100 million. We included the extra 20 for that to pay down that previous lease purchase arrangement. And then as we begin to work on the design process and working with various teams, we pull in everybody from the principals or the coaches as it relates to these ball fields. A lot of folks on my team are involved, from technology to Mr. Aldrich and his team and other folks as well, and in addition to our architect, engineers, and the design crews that are involved, construction management. I think as we kind of work through that process and what we've done in years past, is our objective is to maintain that overall $100 million. That's the initial goal. We know the money is kind of fungible. It needs to be, because nothing has been well defined. So we're kind of targeting that overall goal. What we're fortunate with is that $100 million, because we were able to invest that and put it aside, we received some premium and some interest we're expecting off of that to the tune of about $9.5 million. So that 100 million projects is now closer to 109 plus million that we get to expend, and we have to expend on bond projects only, and we have to expend that within a 3-year window. So it's a lot of moving parts all at the same time. What I will say is, as we work through this and work with design teams, our main objective is obviously to design and build very high quality projects that will have a long lifespan. We want to make sure we engage all the right folks that it's done right. So that's where the real work begins, and where you start to learn more about the project and the design that's necessary. One other point, and we've discussed this throughout, we always intended to supplement some of this work with capital dollars, as just to be strategic, to kind of weave that into the work. So we knew that was going to be in play as well. So with that said, we get into the hard design and the true estimates, and then leading up to bidding as we work with our design team. And in that, as we're going through, we run into a few different issues. So especially as it relates to this project, we didn't do a survey before we did the work, and we didn't understand the extent of the grading that was involved. And so it really did we ran into some unforeseen issues. That was a big part of the gap that we came across. Another big issue that we ran into, we did some scope add. We added some components that we didn't necessarily thought we would do it on the front end. And probably the biggest one is the auxiliary field at Liberty High School, sometimes referred to as Baghdad, the middle field. Had some very serious issues to it. I think it's between 8 and 9 feet is the slope between home plate and the outfield. It's just an unsafe condition. So we knew we had to completely regrade that site. Feet. Wow. So we knew kind of going in, we'd have to regrade that site. And that really did lead to a little bit of a ripple effect, right, as we kind of got into it. A couple other quick points. There were some, I would say, estimates that were a little lacking on the turf side. So we were off on our construction management team. Had a little bit of a miss there. And then also, as much as they did include a fairly aggressive inflation number, we always expected that to kind of dip down, and we have not seen that. I think it's just kind of the reality of it. So with all that, as we kind of went through this process, we stuck with the plan and the process, and we're coming in with a total bid package of $8.8 million. And again, that's outlined for you today in that report. And I think that's all I had. And I think what we talked a little bit about too as well is potentially for some of these larger projects, because there are others that are tracking. We're in chin deep on Discovery, South Valley, Epic, and those are all tracking high as well. But for us, the main thing is we're going to hit what we need to do and complete what we need to complete, but we're going to stay within the budget that we have. And we've done that in the past, and it's been a little funky at times, and we're going to continue to do that. So we'll keep you updated along the way, especially on some of these major projects that are a little bit more involved, so that you're more aware. And then I would also keep an eye on those reports that we'll continue to update you with each month to kind of give you a sense of how everything's coming along.
We'll also have the opportunity to leverage our study sessions, with those reconvening in September as probably a standing item month upon month. to be able to give you updates and bring anything else forward that we would need some time with as a board. So, questions of Mr. Anderson?
Wasn't one of the points that was made, though, throughout this process from both you and the architects, and it kind of goes to Cindy's finance point, I can give you information, but it's already wrong. And I felt like they also messaged out, these are our best estimates or guesstimates based on what's going on with the market.
Yeah, I
And
think-
you know, and then, well, building supplies post-COVID really jumped in price. From what I understand, they also haven't lowered drastically either. So we're kind of faced with a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think the bigger part is, I mean, I think we probably take it for granted, is we really don't know what the project is.
Right.
And so this is back in November 22, when we kind of finalized a rough idea of what we thought these would be. We had not spent any real time on those projects, so we didn't know what we were getting into. Now, of course, we do, and like I said, this is an interesting project because it's an interesting site. But yeah, there are a couple different things going on.
But also, would you have done things differently with any other project?
No.
The surveying is not a typical thing to be done prior to.
Right, you don't want to do that because if you don't get the vote, that's money you're.
It ends up being a little presumptuous, and
Yes,
those
it
those
does.
funds end up coming out of your capital expenditures as compared
Right.
to kind of the bond proceeds. So I've seen other districts that have done that on the front end and maybe ended up in a better place if their election passed. Also seen districts that spent a little bit of money on the front end and perhaps their election did not pass.
Right.
So you certainly are kind of in an awkward spot at that point.
But it's not an unusual process to follow either. It's
No.
pretty typical for what we've done in the past. So I just wanted to point that out.
When you talk about adjustments, I mean, is there a chance that some of the projects that we've talked about might fall off to stay
No.
within? Okay.
No. Yeah, and that's the thing, and, you know, thankfully we've been at this for a while. We've got the same team involved, and, you know, it's a little, you know, this is out of the gate. We're kind of hitting all the big projects right out of the gate. So we're going to see kind of this first wave is going to be a little, I think, a little painful, but we always have a strategy as we're rolling forward. And we've already kind of mapped that out. Maybe we can share that at the study session, how that's kind of unfolding over time. But we have every confidence, certainly, that every project that was included in the bond and promised the voters is going to be completed as promised. It's just how we do that is going to be the challenge.
For tonight's purposes, we're approving the bids. Can you remind me, is Newkirk Novak, are they construction manager at risk on this
They're
one?
not at risk, no.
So we'll then come back and approve contracts at a later date?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So as you were talking, I mean, it does feel like the material for the synthetic fields was probably off a good deal.
Yeah, that one
Good
is-
term there, good deal. I mean,
Yeah,
taking
well,
away-
it was a little disappointing. I think that was probably the one where I wish our team would have caught. I think the number that we included didn't include, the initial number, the estimate was just the carpet,
Yeah.
but not,
Done there.
and so that was a bit of a miss. But again, we'd still be where we're at now.
Sure,
Yeah.
yep. Sorry, AJ.
Go ahead, you
Real
go
quick.
ahead.
So Liberty North, we're going to add the champion wall there, right?
Yes.
Liberty has one? Is
They
that
have
right?
one.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that a couple of years ago.
Great.
We put the road back through to serve the fine arts.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
3 years is, I think that's what I heard you say, that they got to be completed. Is any potential some project will have to go in another way? We'll be able to complete all those that we committed to
We'll get
in the
it
bond
done.
issue?
Yeah, we'll get it done because we need to get it done. So yeah, it'll get done. Yeah, I mean, some of them like lingers a little bit past that third year, and a lot of it's the payments, and as we kind of make our way through it. But I think right now, the very end where everything's completely buttoned up is, I think, early 27, I believe. So it's kind of that 3 to 4 year.
I know we're going to spend capital funds throughout this whole bond issue, but will ultimately capital funds have to actually cover some of these bond-related issues?
So it's just, how we kind of frame it or supplement some of the work is really what it comes down to. As we learn more through the design process, and I'll just give you a good example. So when we're talking to Discovering South Valley, the square footage footprints that were included initially, as we work through that process, they're just going to have to be bigger to accommodate the PE space and the performance space and all the infrastructure related to that project. So it's just simply got to be bigger. And so we might supplement some of the HVAC work that's necessary through some of our capital funds. We're still going to work through that when we get closer to it. The other part is I think come October is when we have the next wave of more significant work. Then we'll kind of recalibrate after that. But I think it'll be a little bit of a marriage between the two as we go forward, but certainly most of it's going to be coming out of bond.
Okay, thank you.
And you stated that it's your plan and has been historically that these be managed or presented and approved through the board on the consent agenda. And I guess as we approach this going forward, that's what we should anticipate. I mean, this one, I guess, kind of jumped out right out of the gate, being one that not double the estimate, but 85% of increase. I guess I wonder if there isn't some level at which, I guess for your benefit, we maybe as a board discuss that if there's a variance to some amount, let's pull it off. I don't know.
And we've had that conversation,
even
today, this week, as to if there is a particular threshold, because you are dealing with very significant projects.
Right.
And so to your point, there may be the need to establish that threshold. But then the other piece to it is keep in mind leveraging our study sessions, getting that information out to you in a Friday update or as needed through pulling it from consent agenda onto our regular agenda. So absolutely, we'll continue to track that. I would much rather have it out and have the conversation, whether it's a study session for further discussion, conversation, or whether it's in our regular monthly meeting. But I do appreciate Steve and the team from Newkirk, Novak, and Hollis and Miller in putting it to a schedule, in that it is a significant amount of work. The benefit we had last time around, you may or may not recall, just as much as we're talking about overages, we did have a few projects that actually came in under. I'm not feeling great about that moving forward just yet, but who knows what Mr. Anderson and the team can come up with. But it is a constant ebb and flow and navigating change orders once you get at that level. But yeah, here out of the gate, all districts, I think, are seeing an uptick in what they thought they were going to experience from a cost standpoint. So.
And just the last question is this project as it relates to timing. I mean, we just had our state champion baseball team in here, and this is, so how will the timing hit to where anything will be done between now and then, or is this something that really dirt starts flying after the season?
Well, as you can imagine, the coach kind of pulled me aside before he left and asked me the same question. So, we're not sure. What I can tell you right now, tentatively, is what we have scheduled. One of the reasons we're really, hopeful to get this moving today, because it helps us get the turf into production, which is a big help. But what our sense is right now, and again, weather's going to be a huge factor here, is that we should be in a pretty good shape for North for the start of the men's baseball come March 1. We feel pretty good about that. This one's going to be a little tougher because of the extent of the work. But we're going to do everything we can to have them meet that same goal. We have been in good conversations with both coaches and ADs about, okay, you have to assume it's not going to happen. So then what do you do, right? So they've talked about scheduling out of the gate more games away and flipping them towards the end of the season, finding off-site options for them. They've been great to deal with that. We also gave them the option to, the easiest thing to do would have been wait until after next season, which would have lost a whole, so there's some risk here. Right. Thankfully, they're aware of that. They've been really supportive and helpful throughout, but we'll know more come February.
Wow. Well, that's a big leap here, Mr. Anderson. That's a big leap.
And to that end,
I went through November, December.
Thank you, be honest.
We've also had great partnership with William Jewell College and other entities that have fields available to them or to us. Similarly, William Jewell's in a similar boat of having to work around their construction projects, of which I believe we're hosting their home games at Liberty North High School. So if not for partners like them, we would be scrambling to really try to find other locations to kind of fill the void. or the need, so.
One last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the folks that have been involved, especially the folks at the building, the level of appreciation and to being able to influence the work in a way that they feel good about and excited about. Again, there's no excess in here, it's pretty straightforward stuff, but I know they would appreciate me passing along. They're going to end up with some really good projects that'll last for a couple generations. So.
Well, I move the board approve the Liberty North High School and Liberty High School baseball softball complex bid.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next up.
Next item, 5.2, is the MSBA advocacy positions. You may recall at our last meeting, we had a great discussion under the final agenda item in terms of board remarks around advocacy positions and an opportunity to influence or attempt to influence the Missouri School Boards Association legislative platform. Time is kind of the essence in terms of upon us to be able to submit a request specifically on the document that is presented to you in and around times in which elections are held. And so we did a little bit of legwork. I know a couple of board members assisted with that, Ms. Rogers and Mr. Byrd. So wanted to turn it over to the two of you in terms of what you found and what the recommendation would be for this evening moving forward.
Okay. So just as background, Missouri School Boards Association has their fall conference coming up, and every year during that conference, the advocacy positions for the following state legislative session get updated, and AJ will be our representative in that meeting, and Drew will be our alternate in that meeting as well. So any school board in the state can submit a platform, a suggested position, and there's a list on the Missouri School Boards Association website of all of the ones from previous years. This is actually just a really small change. When we were talking about this in our last meeting, I had thought that we did not have anything in our current MSBA advocacy positions about having continued April elections or municipal elections. I went back and reread the MSBA email soliciting platform request and then realized that was not what they were asking for. They were asking for something else. But I did reread the platform positions. We do have a school board elections platform that says, basically, if you look at the document in front of you under school board elections, the current wording is all of that except for the word April. So the only thing we would be doing is proposing to add April to the municipal election day if we want to do that. And so us as a board voting to submit would not mean that it would be automatically included in that. It would just mean that by September 4th, if we vote on this tonight, we would submit it and that it would be considered at the delegate assembly. So, and then the entire School Boards Association would do that. So the reason why, there's a list here of the statement of reasons, and one of the things we talked about last time is the commitment to nonpartisan elections, and that there are some states that have started moving their municipal elections to the fall, to the partisan elections, which has several disadvantages in terms of increasing the partisanship in the races and kind of impacts governance, and then also creates, with so many races going on in November, it makes it harder for local races to cut through in terms of importance. And so this is kind of a way of anticipating if there's any legislation that comes through Missouri in the next session that would propose to move the municipal election day for the state to November. This is giving our advocacy team clear guidance that we want that municipal election to stay in April and for school board elections to stay in April. So it's one word, and I just used a lot of words to explain it.
And that's correct. This proposal has been made before to move elections to November. And what we also are talking about, elections becoming more expensive because suddenly you're competing with advertising, TV advertising. So clearly, it's something that both Karen and I agree with and advocate that we take that position, that the elections remain in April. And there's several other things that
The start dates, that's still a question. It's subject to come back up again. I think it's in place already now, but it gave us so many years, if I'm correct, to make that move. But so I think we need to act on this and position ourselves to say this is where we stand. And it's important for the MSBA to move forward with that. And hopefully other districts are doing the same thing.
Well, that reminds me, one of the things we had talked about when you and I talked about this last was, are there districts that do elect at different times of the year? And particularly, there's a lot of state laws that are kind of enacted just for Kansas City and St. Louis with actually not identifying them. And so they do, I did talk to Susan Goldammer today, who is the lawyer at MSBA, and she said that they do elect in November, but that they would not be opposed to this advocacy position because they did not seek out that change for them, that they would be okay with us pursuing this because this is something they wanted to, they like the idea of April elections as well. So it wouldn't be stepping on toes of a fellow district.
And the important thing about having those advocacy positions in place, we have people who advocate for us in Jeff City, our lobbyist, and if we don't have more specific instructions, because that's what these are, then they'll work on other issues. But having this specific piece in there helps them to hone in on, we want the April piece to stay there.
Two things related, just as an aside. If you will go back to our LPS legislative priorities that we approve each fall and communicate to our area legislators under the category of governance, under legislative consideration, we have an item that speaks to this specifically that says, it's very simple, one sentence, maintain the nonpartisan nature of school boards by keeping board member elections in April. So we already have that as a district that we share with our legislators. The second piece is that if the board decides to submit this request of MSBA to be included in their legislative priorities, our timeline is September 5th, which is right around the corner. 4th, it was
Labor Day.
On Labor Day.
It's Labor Day at 5 o'clock.
Of course, our study session is the next day, so we wanted to honor the conversation from last month, do some legwork, and kind of get to this point. There is the form that needs to be submitted. That can be submitted by an individual, but it has to be approved by the board, correct? So that's the conversation here this evening.
My recollection is it goes to the advocacy committee that then
It does go
reviews
to
it
the advocacy
and
committee.
then makes a recommendation.
And then they put together the handbook,
I mean,
which then shows up in November.
This will not be controversial, I think, the vast majority of.
Oh, please,
School.
not like last year.
Yeah, well, I'm saying this one won't be. I'm not saying there won't be other ones, but.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But I think this is one that a lot of people can get behind, so.
I agree. Any other comments, questions?
I move the board approve the MSBA advocacy position as presented.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Local compliance plan?
5.3 is an annual item that we have posted with some minor revisions, and that we leverage the DESI model compliance plan and have that presented to you this evening for approval as we begin the 23-24 school year.
It's only 169 pages.
Yes.
And I noticed that it's basically, we're checking the box that this is the DESI model form
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that we utilize.
that we use.
I mean, you can write your own, but
That doesn't sound fun.
there are districts that do it, though.
I move the board adopt the model compliance plan made available by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Board policy revision.
So under 5.4, we had one policy update that we were actually going to request action for first read, and that we had identified some minor changes, mainly changes in personnel that needed to be reflected in policy AC. Well, then at the same time, we're awaiting updates from MSBA, and lo and behold, MSBA submitted at the end of last week 4 policies that we're in the process of reviewing, one of which included policy AC. So our minor changes evolved to more changes, and so in discussion decided to hold on that, present that for first read this evening, and then bring that back around at our September meeting for your consideration, along with other policy updates that we have now received from the Missouri School Boards Association. So for the intent of this evening, that is just shared this evening for first read. You'll see that again. If you have questions, thoughts, comments, please let us know between now and the September board meeting, and then we'll bring another round of MSBA updates to you as far as policy considerations. So just to share that with you this evening as information only as a first read.
So is this version of Board Policy AC the most recent iteration of changes?
It is included in that.
Okay.
That is correct. Yeah, beyond what our initial minor tweaks were. Okay. And then the last item under new business is 5.5, contract purchases and bids, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Anderson to walk us through those.
Sure, real brief, there's just the one here today, and that's for Unite Private Networks, and we had to move some fiber as part of some work at Alexander Donovan, and it was kind of a last minute change, so we had to rush to get the work done before the start of school.
Can we get a tour of that new data closet?
Sure. We'll have to do that one at a time.
You didn't get us any pictures? No video either? Oh my gosh.
Live stream.
I move the board approve the contract with Unite Private Networks LLC.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. 2, Board of Education, legislation and advocacy. I think we hit the advocacy. Is there anything new on legislation? I don't think so.
The only thing I would mention is watching Senate Bill 190 and its implications on property tax collections and the potential of tax credits being applied. This is kind of on a county-by-county basis, of which county governments have the option to approve moving forward with that or putting it to a vote. And so we're watching that in Clay County, but then also Jackson County, south of the river, other counties across the state, and how they're navigating that. We've had quite a few conversations with other districts. The quick version is it is likely going to be litigated in terms of the constitutionality and the interpretation of the bill that passed earlier last spring, but then also how can we quantify the impact on taxing jurisdictions, not just school districts, but taxing jurisdictions in Clay County and elsewhere, and what that does to local revenue moving forward. So we will likely have ongoing conversations about that. As we learn more, we'll share more, but just wanted to make sure that that is on everyone's radar.
Thanks for the listing of all of the meetings between now and June. That is rather lengthy. Also, if you would take a look at, they had, the school and committee assignments have been uploaded, as well as character trait luncheons and Team Liberty dates. If you still need to sign up for one of those, let Denise know. There are still, I saw a couple of slots on Team Liberty. Did all of the character traits? I can look real quick.
All of the character traits, yes,
Are done. Has everybody got a date to go character trading? The most fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just like to say, though, if you come across and you have a character trait luncheon or you have a Team Liberty meeting and you can't meet, do we want to send it through you? And
Yes,
just
please.
maybe somebody else can pick that up if you can't make it.
Well,
And sometimes things just happen,
Yeah.
so.
And if somebody hasn't signed up for Team Liberty yet and neither of those dates work, I'm pretty flexible. I could trade with somebody if they needed me to.
Me too.
I like mine, I'm not trading.
Oh, I
But-
think I get to go to the first one.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. You should go to
Yeah.
the first one. It's good.
But yeah, just because I think it's important, particularly for the Team Liberty one, that there's a board member there. I think they appreciate seeing us there. It also gives you a great idea of what's being discussed in the conversations. And it looks like they're all here.
The one in September is shorter, if anyone can handle a couple hours shorter.
And if you can't stay for the whole thing, that is not a problem either. So don't think that, they go from 8 to 3:30. Not all of them last until 3:30 for starters, but they do start at 8. So, if you need to leave, that's not a problem. People have a life outside of the district board responsibilities. So, any other board remarks?
I just want to share, you want to talk about our trip to down 291?
Oh my gosh. We went to the Lee Summit board meeting and
They were very gracious.
They were very gracious.
They were happy to have us.
However, just so you know how lucky you are, in that Dr. Tucker did say we were the best school board in the state. We heard him. Nick, you heard him?
Yeah.
Jen heard him?
At the Lee Summit meeting, he said?
No, he said this at the
I would repeat it if asked.
But they do their work session at 5 p.m. Then at 6 p.m., they do their closed session. Then at 7 o'clock, they do their board meeting. So, and we left about 9. So they were there for 4 hours.
What meeting they do at 5? What meeting?
They do their work session.
Oh, so it's one meeting a month, is that what it amounts to?
They have one date a month when they do
Okay.
all of their meetings, like
Okay.
they streamline that in. And they also we found this very interesting, I think. Typically, on their agenda, public comment is at the end. But for this particular meeting, they were talking about transportation for early childhood, and they allowed an individual who did want to make public comment about that issue to speak before the board discussed that issue, which I found intriguing. So there was that one person who spoke then, and then there were 2 people who spoke at the end. It was interesting.
And we were going for learning purposes, just to observe. One of the things, MSBA, for your CBM credits, you can get additional credits for going and watching another board meeting. You write it up, submit, and we're like, well, Lee Summit's kind of,
Interesting.
Similar size. It was interesting to go see. And
They have a dais. I would love to have a dais, just saying.
they had they had much better seating for their audience.
They had little tables, but you do get paid a chair.
In favor of it, huh?
And the other thing I think we both paid attention to, they refer to each other as Board Member Currents, Vice President Rogers. They're very formal in their conversations. And they also do roll call votes.
That's interesting, President Reed.
Roll call, or the hand, they don't call names every.
Yeah, they do, they do approvals and, what do you call that when you just raise? your-
Acclamation or hand raise
Yeah.
or something, so.
Yeah, we do roll calls.
Yeah, we do roll calls. Both districts that I've watched, actually all 3 that I've seen in the area, do not do continual roll calls. They roll call certain things, but generally it's just all in agreement. Aye, all opposed, nay, boom, done.
Hashtag LPS leads.
Hashtag, not on this one. So, it was interesting though.
It was interesting, and they were very gracious, so it was you've observed several board meetings, so this is my first one to go watch, like, as a board member, to go watch another board meeting.
We got introduced.
Yes, we did.
Yes. It was interesting.
Is there anything that says that we are to have roll call votes on everything?
Not sure.
Legally required to go into closed session votes, and that's it.
That's how
Yeah.
we did Eldon.
There's some, we talked about this at the president's piece at the summer summit, and districts do it all different ways. But some do a combination. If it's a more contentious issue, they do the roll call. The other ones, they don't. And then the other interesting thing I've heard is who makes the motions. Because there are districts where a person makes the motions, like Dan Currents makes all the motions, and Drew Marriott takes all the seconds. Boom, and you're done.
Ooh, another thing was that they had buzzers to be recognized.
Yeah.
You had to be, the president had to recognize you.
You couldn't speak until I would say, you may speak. So think about that. Chocolate. I like that.
On that note, Dan, do you want to make a motion?
Before Angie gets any ideas.
It's time for a does nobody else has comments, but it was interesting.
I'll just say, every year at this time, I think we've had this Tuesday meeting before school opens the last couple of years. And I'm just anxious.
Yep.
Not in a nervous way, but an excited way. I know all of you have some anxiousness and probably some knots too, depending on where you're at. But man, the leadership of the organization, everybody that runs throughout this district, top to bottom, it doesn't happen without everybody. And I know we know that instinctively, but just to say it and thank everybody who's going to show up tomorrow, be there, do their role, welcome our students, support our faculty, and all of our operations folks. Just a huge thanks as we get off and running. I think it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to hearing all the good news come out and Dallas post all the great picks for tomorrow. So
LPS leads.
That's right.
Well said.
Any other comments? Motion? Whoever wants to make it?
Dan.
Yeah, it's your motion.
I move the board adjourn.
Second.
Nick,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
AJ.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Motion carries.